Welcome to Learn the Word, the daily Bible teaching program of Calvary Chapel of Delta and Pastor Doug McLean. In part 3 of the message, Test for the Heart, we're joining Pastor Doug in Proverbs 17 and verse 11 to see what wisdom reveals about where we are with the Lord.
Verse 11, an evil man seeks only rebellion, therefore a cruel messenger will be sent against him. Now remember, it was Samuel who said to Saul in 1 Samuel 15, 22 and 23, that rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft. 1 Samuel 15, 22 to 23. Rebellion is evil. Who was the first rebel? Well, Satan was the first rebel. He rebelled against God. He led a third of the angels in his rebellion against God. And then he led man into rebellion. So rebellion is satanic. And God has put authorities in place. He has since the beginning to help us learn that lesson. Now, our loyalty has to be the Lord first, above all else. And his word has to triumph over every other authority in our lives. So what he says goes. With that being said, if an authority tells you to do something or not to do something and it doesn't violate your loyalty to the Lord, you should comply with the authority. There's a chain of command. So we obey the Lord first above everything else, and then we obey the authorities that are under them as long as they're operating under that chain of command. Rebellion is evil. And it opens up all kinds of opportunities for the devil and his demons to mess with you. Stay away from rebellion. You will make your way more difficult if you're rebellious. And ultimately here, the messenger or angel, the messenger, cruel messenger, the worst one is the angel of death. For the continual rebel, ultimately, if they don't repent, that's what they have to face. Verse 12. Let a man meet a bear robbed of her cubs rather than a fool in his folly. Now, you don't want to meet a bear robbed of her cubs. That's not a situation that you would deliberately walk into. Oh, there's a bear robbed of her cubs. I think I'll go see her. You wouldn't do that. That would not make sense. But Solomon, after saying that, he says it's worse to meet a fool in his folly. So if a fool is heavily involved in his folly, why go there and get involved? It would be like, remember Saul, so caught up in his foolishness and his folly that he actually tried to pin David to a wall with a spear. Not just once, but twice. David had to dodge them. And David, all David was doing was leading his army, giving him victory, just a loyal subject, and Saul wanted to take him out. And then, Saul got to this place in his folly where he actually tried to kill his own son with a spear. And then he ends up killing all the priests, priestly families, in his folly. So not a good situation to walk into, to deliberately walk into a situation where a fool is heavily involved in his folly is a dangerous place to be. Verse 13, whoever rewards evil for good, evil will not depart from his house. A couple examples, 1 Samuel 25, Nabal, whose name means fool, rewarded David's good. Remember, David and his men were protecting Nabal's sheep and his shepherds, protecting them, and Nabal rewarded David's good with evil, with insults, with exclusion, and Nabal just brought evil in his house, ended up dying. Then David was guilty of this as well. Uriah the Hittite, one of his mighty men, out fighting, valiant soldier for David. And how did David reward him? He slept with his wife. Then he had Uriah executed, 2 Samuel 11. And as a result, the sword did not depart from his house. David's house, if you study the text, was a disaster after that. So whoever rewards evil for good, evil will not depart from his house. Colossians 3:25 says, He who does wrong will be repaid for what he has done, and there is no partiality. So you have to think about it. Your behavior has consequences. Jesus taught us to do the exact opposite of this verse. He said in Matthew 5:44 and 45, Matthew 5:44 and 45, love your enemies, bless those that curse you, do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you. Why? That you may be sons of your Father in heaven, who makes his sun rise on both the evil and the good, and sends rain on both the just and the unjust. So that's who we should be like, to bless, to do good to those that even would do evil to us. Verse 14, the beginning of strife is like releasing water, therefore stop contention before a quarrel starts. So the picture is an argument, little argument that can start as a little tiny dispute, and there's just a slow trickle. And you have this opportunity to fix the slow trickle, but if you don't give attention to it, erosion happens. The next thing you know, the dam breaks. And there's a lot of consequence, a lot of cleanup, damage done to many. And so Ephesians 4:26 says, Ephesians 4:26 and 27, be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger, nor give place to the devil. Get things resolved. Stop the quarrel before it gets worse. Get it resolved. If you don't get it resolved, it's just going to fester and grow, and vain imagination comes in, and suspicion comes in, and then the sides start to grow, and you have this group against this group, and it goes from a little trickle to a whole dam busting, and there's all kinds of collateral damage. 2 Kings chapter 14 tells the story of a king named Amaziah, and he had a couple of victories, and so he decided to start a fight with King Jehoash of Israel in the north. But Amaziah just wanted this battle, and Jehoash said, look, no, I don't want to fight you. I don't want to fight you. And he just wouldn't listen. He wanted the quarrel. He didn't resolve the quarrel. And it didn't work out very well for him. You read the story there in 2 Kings 14, and he ended up being captured. A section of Jerusalem's wall was broken down. The gold and the silver in the house of the Lord and the king's house were taken. Hostages were taken. Man, the whole dam broke. It started with this challenge, hey, let's go fight. And he just wouldn't resolve. And there was all kinds of collateral damage. Stop the fight as quickly as you can. Verse 15. He who justifies the wicked and he who condemns the just, both of them are alike, are an abomination to the Lord. So this kind of adds a little bit of clarity to verse 9. Yes, we're to cover, but we're never to justify the wicked. So we still need to deal with sin biblically. But this verse is really about corrupt judges, that he expects justice to be carried out. He's not indifferent to wickedness. He expects courts to execute justice. Fairness in a court of law is his expectation. Because remember, every court is delegated authority from the Lord. And so what he expects from our government is to stand for righteousness and to come against unrighteousness. That's their job. That's why they're given authority. Isaiah 5:20, the Lord said, Isaiah 5:20, woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. So, woe to those that confuse this whole concept, this whole topic. Look, we're justified. Yeah, we're wicked by nature, but we're justified because he makes us right. He makes us right. Remember that. We're justified because Jesus took our wickedness. It's not that he just says, oh, I know he's wicked, but let's let him just slide by. We'll let a little bit of wickedness in. It doesn't work that way. That's not biblical salvation. Biblical salvation is that he made him who knew no sin, Jesus, to be sin for us. So he actually took on our sin, and then he was judged for us in our place, so that his righteousness could be imputed upon us, so that we would be right. We get in because we're made right, not because he lets us slide in. He doesn't justify the wicked. He makes us right, and he justifies us. But in the world, our judges, our authorities, if they justify the wicked and condemn the just, that confuses the whole concept of justice. It diminishes the correct communication of the fact that there are standards and there will be accountability. You understand that our whole justice system, the way this whole thing works, is to teach that truth, that there's accountability, that there's right and there's wrong. And man, that's getting all twisted, turned around. Verse 16 asks a question. Why is there in the hand of a fool the purchase price of wisdom, since he has no heart for it? So we would say today, why does someone have the ability to afford college tuition and have no desire to learn? And the answer to this question is that God is gracious. That's the answer. In other words, he's communicating the lack of wisdom is not God's fault. That's the idea. The lack of wisdom is the lack of desire for it. That's reality. If somebody has the ability to purchase all the wisdom in the world and they don't have it, what's the problem? They don't want it. They don't desire it. That's what James 1 teaches us, right? If anyone lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, and he gives it freely, without reproach. Again, it's a matter of the heart. Verse 17, a friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. So a true friend is not fickle or changeable. A true friend won't say, I got a new friend. I'm going to ditch this friend because I have a new friend, or that friend's not doing well, and so I'm going to go over to this friend, or he's great when he's happy, but he's grumpy, so I don't want to be around him anymore. That's not a true friend. John 15:13-15 said this, John 15:13-15, greater love has no one than this, than to lay down one's life for his friends. You are my friends if you do whatever I command you. No longer do I call you servants, for a servant does not know what his master is doing, but I have called you friends. For all things I heard from my Father I've made known to you. So we're friends of the Lord. A friend, if we're going to be friends to others, is unselfish. A friend is willing to lay down his life for the other person. A friend doesn't leave when things get tough. A friend will rejoice when you rejoice and will weep when you weep. And I think it's a great prayer for all of us to pray is, Lord, help me be a true friend. A brother is a bit different. A brother didn't choose to be your brother. They're stuck with you. A brother didn't choose to be your brother. He's your brother because you're in the same family, you have the same parents. The value of the brother is seen, it's highlighted here, that it's seen in adversity. So in the most difficult times, your brother is like a safety net, or that's the way God intended it to be, that your brother would be there. Things don't change. He's still your brother. Even if he's not being the brother he should, he's still your brother in the most difficult times. So the fascinating thing as you look at this is we should be brothers and sisters. As Christians, we are brothers and sisters. You're stuck with us because we have the same Father. That's who we are. You're in the family. And we should be friends. We should pursue brotherly love. You understand that we are brothers and sisters. We should pursue that friendship. Verse 18. A man devoid of understanding shakes hands in a pledge and becomes surety for his friend. So to be surety is to guarantee or co-sign a debt. And he's saying people that do this aren't really thinking. It's something you really have to think through, because you do this, it can destroy a friendship. It can put you in a very, very difficult situation. It can put the person you're co-signing for in a very, very difficult situation, because you really don't have understanding of the full potential of the pledge that you're making, since there are so many unforeseen things that can come. So Solomon says, look, you just don't do it. Something you have to think through. I would say if you're going to co-sign, make sure you're ready to pay it. You got to reckon that. Even if you think they're a great person and they're going to be faithful and they're going to do things, you don't know. Verse 19. He who loves transgression loves strife, and he who exalts his gate seeks destruction. So loving transgression and loving strife go together. A heart that rebels against God, transgression, will find himself in conflict with others. If a person isn't right with God, they'll find themselves not right with others. The separation relationship is a consequence of a problem in their relationship with God. Always remember that if you're having struggles in relationships, there's some deficit somewhere in their connection with God. Because if we're all right with God, we have fellowship with one another. If we walk in the light as he is in the light, we have fellowship with one another, and the blood of Jesus Christ cleanses us from all sin. That's where there's fellowship. When you're right with God, then we come together. Now it's interesting. He gives us an example. To exalt your gate would be to build a big high gate. Why would you do that? Well, it was a way of bragging. You've probably seen houses with big gates. Have you seen houses with big gates? Like big gate. What does a big gate say? I'm really important. And what's behind this gate is really nice. You can't come in. Right? That's what a big gate says. In other words, when you're saying that to a world, you're saying, come rip me off. In fact, if you're really powerful, come destroy my gate and take all my stuff. In the ancient world, that's what you'd be saying. So it's kind of bragging, self-exaltation, saying, look what I have, look how strong we are, look what I've been able to accomplish. And so bragging, pride, self-exaltation, which are all sin, result in strife, increased conflict with others. That's the example here of loving transgression and loving strife. Verse 20, he who has a deceitful heart finds no good, and he who has a perverse tongue falls into evil. If you find no good, your heart is fooling you. That's what Solomon is saying. I know the world looks bad, but if you wake up today and you find no good, you look around and you say, everything's terrible. It's horrible. You have a deceitful heart. Paul wrote in Philippians 4:8, finally, brethren, whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are of good report, if there's any virtue, if there's anything praiseworthy, meditate on these things. So if the Word of God says we should do that, there has to be things that we can find and recognize that are praiseworthy. And yes, the world has fallen. People are sinful. Times can be terrible. But in the worst situation, there are still things that are noble and just and pure and lovely and of good report and virtuous and praiseworthy. And Paul said, get your mind on those things. And if you can't see it, you're deceived. Now, if you have a perverse tongue, because he links this here together, he who has a perverse tongue falls into evil. If you have a perverse tongue, remember the tongue is the overflow of the heart. So if you have a perverse tongue, it's an overflow of your heart, and you better watch out because you're heading for evil. Your words are the result of your heart. Your deeds will follow. Your deeds will follow. So you got to pay attention to what's coming out of your mouth and deal with your heart now before you go that way. Verse 21, he who begets a scoffer does so to his own sorrow, and the father of a fool has no joy. So he's touching on this idea that children can bring their parents a lot of sorrow, and a child's behavior can totally depress a parent. Why? Love, love. A parent loves a child so much and invests their life in a child so much that a child can really get to a parent's heart. And it happens that way. And when it happens that way, you have to remember that's the way our Heavenly Father is. He loves us so much, and if we're going the wrong way, it hurts his heart. Remember, he's the one that gave us the story of the prodigal son. He's the one that made himself out to be the father. He's the one that said the Father was looking a far way off when he saw his Son coming and got up and ran to him and embraced him and had compassion on him. He told us that about himself. So the things we do affect him. And our children can be the greatest joy and they can be our greatest sorrow. Verse 22, a merry heart does good like medicine, but a broken spirit dries the bones. So we are, remember, spiritual, mental, and physical, and what's happening in our spirit impacts what happens mentally, and what happens mentally impacts what happens physically. Absolutely true that one aspect of your life affects the other. So David, for example, when he was in his time of sin, he wrote Psalm 32, he wrote about it, and when he was in sin and not repentant, he said that his bones grew old, and he was groaning, and he was dry, and he felt the Lord's hand heavy upon him. That his spiritual condition actually affected his physical being. And so here Solomon touches on the opposite side, and he says, a merry heart is good for you physically. Good for you. So it's just so you get to the New Testament and you find these passages that say rejoice always, and again I say rejoice. You find the passage that says that we should be thankful. And really, it's a great practice to stop every day and give thanks, to rejoice, to remember what God's done for you. It's good for you. Verse 23, a wicked man accepts a bribe behind the back to pervert the ways of justice. So payoffs, bribes, money, to get wicked people off, to get innocent people condemned. That's wicked. It's a perversion. It's a perversion. You know, it's not representing God correctly. God can never be paid off. You understand that. People act like God can be paid off. Like if I do a bunch of good deeds, or I give a big offering, or I go to church all the time, somehow I'm going to pay God off so I can slip in. God can't be paid off. You can't bribe him. Verse 24, wisdom is in the sight of him who has understanding, but the eyes of the fool are on the ends of the earth. I love this one. The idea is that the person who understands, who gets it, will be focused on wisdom. In fact, he'll think about, how do I apply what I know to what's happening right now? I'm thinking, what's the wise way to live? What's the wise way to act? God, show me how to interact today. So my focus is on how practically, wisdom here is practical application of knowledge in any given situation. So the person that has understanding, that gets it, will have their eyes set on that kind of wisdom. The fool misses what's right in front of him, and he spends all his time caring about the things that are furthest from him. So, for example, the fool, his house is a mess because he's focused on everything that's happening all around the world. So the fool is somebody that's not disciplining his children and loving his wife and reaching his neighbors and involved in his local church because he's thinking about things that are way out there that he never can touch. He gets so wrapped up on all these things that are way out there that he can never touch, never do anything about, that he doesn't have any practical expression of Christianity in his day-to-day life. That's a fool. Verse 25, a foolish son is a grief to his father and bitterness to her who bore him. Again, a child's decisions can impact a parent emotionally. The father of the prodigal described his son when he returned. Do you remember what he said about his son? He said, this son of mine that was dead is alive. What was he saying? I grieved. I grieved for him. That's how painful it can be. And if you have that pain in your heart, know that's the heart of the Father. Verse 26, also to punish the righteous is not good, nor to strike princes for their uprightness. So this describes a misuse of power, to punish the righteous, to strike princes that are doing the right things. Verse 27, he who has knowledge spares his words, and a man of understanding is of a calm spirit. Even a fool is counted wise when he holds his peace. When he shuts his lips, he is considered perceptive. So when you speak words, you can't take them back. So you have to be careful about your words. Be careful, particularly when you're upset. A man of understanding is of a calm spirit. Be careful about what you say. Many times it's better just to say nothing than to say something. Peter had that problem, remember? At times he didn't know what to say, so he just said something. And it needed to be corrected often. So it's better just to keep your mouth shut.
That brings us to the end of the message, Test for the Heart, from Proverbs chapter 17. But this message, and all of our recent programs, were taken from past midweek studies at Calvary Chapel of Delta. Currently, Pastor Doug is teaching through the book of Exodus on Sunday mornings and Romans on Wednesday nights. So if you'd like to watch a service online or learn more about visiting us in person, you can find out more at calvarydelta.com. That's calvarydelta.com. Now that brings us to the end of today's program, but we're so glad you joined us for this edition of Learn the Word.